Okay, thumbs up. Jolly good. Thank you. So you just have to dab on the got it button and that will disappear. Okay, so first of all, good afternoon and thank you for joining us. We've got some great news and a super speaker for you today. And for those of you who attend our AGM on a regular basis, you'll know that we're always keen to move through the business quickly to get to the really interesting bits. And this year's no different. So we'll crack on with the formal part of today before we hear our speaker, Sara McGourty, who will tell and show us about digital mapping. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. So if we just move straight to the agenda now. The first item is the welcome, which I've just done, and any apologies. Alison, have you got apologies?
No, I don't have any apologies.
There's a couple on the website. So Alison Blackwood has sent her apologies, and so has Bob and his co-worker down at that little music.
Yeah, Jan and Drain.
Yeah, Sharon,
yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think if there's no other apologies, we move on to item 2, which is adoption of the minutes of the AGM. I don't know if everybody's read them, but if anybody has read them, I'd be looking for a proposer and a seconder to adopt the minutes, please. Anybody prepared to adopt?
Or any errors?
No, I don't think there's any errors. I've been through it today and we'll look at matters arising if there are any in a moment. So can I have a proposer, please, for the Zoe?
I can do that.
Yeah, so Zoe and a seconder, please. Jill, thank you. I read through the minutes again this morning and I couldn't see any matters arising that weren't already covered in the rest of the meeting today. So unless anybody has got any matters arising, anybody got any matters arising from the minutes? I think it's pretty much all just dealt with in the rest of the meeting. No matters arising. Okay, so I'll just go on to some of the good news. So although we haven't had many meetings this year, we, the trustees, have been working hard to ensure resilience for the future, and that will become more apparent in a moment. I'm delighted to announce that we've been awarded a substantial grant of £12,000 from Museums Galleries Scotland and Emma, correct me if I get this wrong, National Heritage Lottery Fund, or is that right? Thank you, which will inform our plans for the future. So there are several strands to this project, which we've called Creating Connections, and it follows the Creating Conversations and the titles to our annual general meetings over the last 3 or 4 years. Firstly, it seems to us that the word heritage is appearing just about everywhere. Everybody's jumping on the heritage bandwagon. But this is in part due to UNESCO's focus on tangible and intangible heritage. Indeed, lots of us volunteering in the third sector were unaware of just what this term intangible heritage actually meant. So at the conference in February, we discussed and focused on the definition of intangible heritage, and now we know a lot more. It's things like food traditions, clootie dumplings, haggis, nips and tatties, tablet and whiskey, and it's music, bagpipes, Highland dancing, ceilidhs, and all those sorts of things that are not castles, archaeological sites, stately homes, and all the rest of it. But what we don't know is what intangible heritage is out there in the wider area of Argyll and Bute. And this is not just a nice to know, it's most definitely a need to know. So we're going to hold a series of micro meetings across Argyll and Bute in an endeavour to identify all those people and organisations who would benefit from membership of ABMHF. And we held a pilot meeting earlier this year that was hosted by Hannah Clinch, and that was incredibly successful. So we're going to use the same toolkit to organise the next 4 meetings. So just to say, together we have a stronger voice. So we'll also conduct a skills survey within the membership, and the intention here is to learn about the skills we have and can use, and the skills we don't have and need to strengthen via training courses, both in person and online. Knowing what we can do empowers us. Our website is in need of a bit of a spruce up, so we're looking for content from the membership. The website is a great resource, so you need to let us know what you want to see on it and what you want it to do. We have a fairly good idea, but that's the idea from our side. What we want to know is what the members want from their website. Although it's called the forum website, you are the forum. In an ideal world, content would be updated as things happen, new events, new discoveries, new archaeological finds, and so forth. The intention is to research and develop content for the website to begin to create a more useful member facility. We have some money within the grant to curate the information that comes in. Please just send us anything you can and we'll get it ready for upload to the website. We'll also put snippets on our other social media platforms such as Facebook. Knowing what we have informs us. We want to learn about and create a digital interactive map, offering training for interested members to use in their own organisations, as well as creating an Argyll and Bute-wide resource. This resource can be shared with other organisations such as the Heart of Argyll Tourism Alliance, Argyll and the Isles Tourism Cooperative Limited, Wild About Argyll, Visit Scotland, and others, including charts. We'll learn from the other project activities and direct surveys more about what our membership thinks we need to include in our website and social media activities. Putting our organisations out there spreads the word, gets people to know about us. So all of these activities are part of creating connections and are budgeted for within the grant. And imminently, we're about to put out a brief for a coordinator or 4 coordinators to host these micro meetings across the 4 areas of Argyll that we've identified. And I think we'll spread that brief as far and as wide as we possibly can. With regard to the forward plan, as I mentioned in last year's report, we continue to review and update our forward plan. And in fact, that forward plan played a substantial part in our application for this new tranche of funding that we've been granted. And it also now includes all the activities that I just outlined earlier and which are laid out in detail in the actual application. From a finance point of view, and I think Zoe will reiterate this as well, the forum is still a free-to-join organisation, and we intend for it to remain so for as long as we can sustain the forum without making a charge. Currently, the Board of Trustees is made up of just 5 people, both working and retired, and we all have lots and lots of other commitments. We were very sorry when Eleanor McKinnon resigned due to other pressures on her time. And I'd like to record not just my thanks, but the thanks of the forum and all its membership to Eleanor for her wise words of wisdom and advice over the years. Thank you, Eleanor. Expanding the Board of Trustees to include different sectors of the community, different sexes, people of colour, people with different religions, in fact, making sure the board is as diverse as it possibly could be, can only be of benefit to ABMHF. New ideas, a breath of fresh air, looking at things through new eyes, are all things that any organisation needs to thrive. Demonstrating that we are a diverse organisation will also show to funders that we are open and inclusive. We try to keep meetings to a minimum, and most of them currently are online. This has been one of the unexpected bonuses of lockdown, and means that people across the length and breadth of Argyll can join the meetings at no extra cost in travel or time. And that's demonstrated by the people here today and where they are all located. Our constitution allows for up to 10 trustees, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to join us. What 5 of us do today, 10 of us could do more quickly and more efficiently tomorrow. It would be good to welcome 5 more trustees. You can do it. Don't forget, this forum is for you. It needs more support from you, the membership. We're not asking you to commit endless hours, but if you can spare some time, not a lot, we would really appreciate it. Please come and join us. Thank you. And that's all for me. And so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Treasurer's report. So can I hand over to Zoe, please?
Yep. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Right. Treasurer's report for this AGM. The accounts ran from the 1st of April 2022 up to the 31st of March 2023, and you've been sent a copy of them. Our current bank account is online. It's with Virgin Media now. It was originally Clydesdale in Oban. That branch has closed. Loch Gilphead branch has either closed or is about to close, but it doesn't matter because I do it online anyway. It's an old style of account. It doesn't have a checkbook. Sorry, it doesn't have a check card, but it has a maximum of 10 items per month, which caught me out this summer once. The idea of opening another account has been considered, but it seems from doing some research, banks are very unwilling to open new society accounts. They want them all to be personal. So I need to research that further. So we'll stick with Virgin Media for the moment. Our income this year was just 2 grants from Museums Galleries Scotland. Our membership remains free, so we have no other income apart from grant funds at present. The Zoom license was paid for us again by MGS. That's very useful for the trustees and the membership, occasions like today. Part of our conference grant for the Connecting Conversations in February was paid by MGS in advance. So although the full grant was 4,469, the forum actually received 3,350 in advance so that we could actually pay the bills and the invoices. Apart from the Zoom license repayment, the other payments were some of the costs of the conference, and some of them have gone into the next financial year. Now, as our costs of that conference were less than we had anticipated, we then later have had to repay part of the grant back to the MGS in the next financial year, so that we've paid our dues back to them and they're then willing to give us another grant in the future. The independent examiner's report of these accounts was done by Mike Barlow, and I'd like to thank him for his willing help. And if anybody's got any questions on this set of accounts, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them for you. Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions? I think you've all had the accounts in advance. They're not very complex. Most of the outgoing items, the expenditure, was related to the conference in February, as you will imagine. So it's all very clearly laid out. So if there are no questions, I'll just ask for someone to propose the accounts, please. Alison, thank you. And a seconder. Eleanor, thank you very much. So thank you for that, Zoe, that's very good. Moving on to the next item is the election of office bearers. I've spoken to everybody in advance and everybody is happy to be re-elected en bloc for the next year. We've had conversations about how things are going to work after the next 12-month period, but we'll deal with that as it approaches. So is everyone happy to adopt the current trustees as the committee for the next year, please. Again, I'm looking, Malcolm, you're muted. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say yes, that was all.
So can I assume that you are proposing to adopt the committee as it stands?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And a seconder, please. Jane, thank you very much. That's very kind. So we've got a meeting lined up for Thursday morning, and we'll sort out the officers at that meeting. So just to say, I'd like to reiterate that we'd really love to be joined by some new members to help us achieve more each year on behalf of Argyll and Bute Heritage. We are a small, friendly, engaged group who are still meeting virtually most of the time. Extra hands could help ABMHF to do a little more and add to our skill set and experience. Please think about joining us, and it's fine if you email us on the ABMHF email just to say that you would be happy to join us. So unless anybody's prepared to dip their toe in the water right now. Okay. I think we've got a couple of people who are considering, so we'll see how that develops over the next couple of 3 weeks. So that's that part of the business. Does anybody else have any other competent business? Anything that they'd like to bring to our attention or tell us or feel that we know about? George, have you got anything that you want us to know about?
You mean me? No, I haven't.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? No? Okay. Right, well, if I can find the last bit of my notes. Our speaker today has great experience in digital mapping. So with your help and Sarah's advice, ABMHF will create an interactive map of all the heritage of Argyll and Bute, yes, including the intangible, that we can find. And that will be shared with all the other parties, as I outlined earlier in the report, including tourism groups. And it'll form a layer in a series of maps showing all of the culture and heritage in Argyll and Bute. So no more ado, over to Sarah. Thank you. And if you'd like to turn off your videos and your speakers until Sarah's finished, then we can just concentrate on that. Thank you. Thanks, okay, Sarah.
I'll start to share my screen. You can tell me if this is working. Let me have a look.
Yay.
Yes.
Is that
excellent?
That's full screen and looking okay? That's
perfect.
Fine. Thank you very much. That's lovely, Sarah.
Right. Okay. I think the first thing I want to say is I think you described me as an expert, and sometimes that puts people off of these things. What I like to say is that really I'm a kind of like a jack of all trades and master of none, and much of this I've picked up over the years, taught myself, and kind of fallen into. So I don't want to kind of like frighten anybody off of kind of like using any of this kind of like technology by pretending to be a complete expert. So that's the first thing I would say. What I'll do is I'll go through, I've got a bit of a presentation to show you with kind of like the premise of what I've been doing. And then I'll come out of that and I'll show you some of the actual kind of the visualizations in web browsers that I've created. So if that's okay. So I'll start with and this was a question that came together for my project, which was for a master's for University of Highlands and Islands when I did the MLET there in History and Archaeology of the Highlands and Islands. And the question was, can an open source methodology be utilised to facilitate a publicly accessible process to visualise the archaeology of the Catherine Ecomuseum at landscape scale, contributing to understanding of change and transition over time. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but with these things you have to try and encapsulate kind of quite big ideas in a single question sometimes. So again, the premise of this was that open source geospatial data and freely available geographic information systems like the one that I used, which was QGIS, which provide the tool sets for taking advantage of this data, generally underutilised in interpretation of archaeological heritage. Archaeologists already use GIS for, well, all the time, for recording, for analysis, for interpretation, for modelling archaeological sites and landscapes. And I'm sure that we've all seen this. And sometimes it can kind of like scare people off of actually giving it a go themselves. So the study that I underwent was focused on the Catherine Ecomuseum, which they described as a museum without walls, so basically outside. And this is over in the sort of Perth and Kinross, Aberdeen, Angus sort of area. And what I did was deploy kind of like the tried and tested methods to formulate sort of a process and generate some novel interpretation using GIS toolsets and data sources. So the processes hopefully are accessible for visualising the archaeological heritage for the Ecomuseum at a kind of broad landscape scale. And luckily, particularly in that area, there was the accessibility of high resolution LiDAR elevation data as well, and that kind of extended the capabilities that I was able to use. But I think what's important before I sort of go on is the idea of democratizing access and active involvement in using all of these things in the data and the process, and they can play a really significant role in public engagement. So a little bit of background. Ecomuseums originated in France back in the 70s, and there are around 600 of them worldwide. Only 2 in Scotland. So there's the one over in the Catherine area, which, as you can see from the map there, it's sort of like from Cooper Angus in the south right up to the kind of like the Cairngorms National Park up in the north there. And then the second one's over on Skye. And they provide an opportunity for local people to share the distinctive heritage of where they live. And also they provide a framework for interpretation of that heritage. And it's mainly through community-led initiatives. And you can see here, like I say, the boundary of the Catherine Ecomuseum. And this image is taken straight from their website. And if you want a closer look, or if you probably know about it already, but if you want a closer look, then if you go to that link, then it will kind of like tell you about the kind of things that they've been up to. So as it says, it's a museum where all the sites are basically outdoors. It covers about 1,000 square kilometres, and it's situated right on the Highland boundary fault, really rich geologically and in human history, with evidence that goes back to the Neolithic period. So some of the images here shows you the sort of heritage that they have, so standing stones and hill forts, castles, military roads, and it's a really sort of beautiful landscapes there as well. So a little bit of context. So because of this, the Ecomuseum provided a really good case study for me. And because there are now a really impressive range of open source data sets available for Scotland, and like I say, these freely available tools, I was able to sort of combine and manipulate the data that I accessed. And it's clear that GIS systems have not really been fully utilised as a means of contributing to their interpretive processes. And this has already been highlighted in a report by University of the Highlands and Islands, but also in the Perth and Kinross Archaeological Research Framework that came out in 2022. So my focus, as it says here, was identifying a method that could use open source data and software, and then could be developed and employed in visualising prehistory archaeology in the ecomuseum landscape, and using that as a case study. And then I did this by sourcing and combining some of the data listed here. So freely available mapping, both current and historic, imagery, aerial and satellite imagery, geology layers, and also these elevation data sets. So the DTM, that's a digital terrain, and then obviously I'm sure you've heard of LiDAR, really high resolution elevation data. And this is a little bit more information about each of the data sources that I used. Yeah, I don't need to go into too much detail. I mean, most of this was, like I say, freely available. You download it straight from a website. The only thing that had to spend a little more time on accessing was the historic environment records data for Angus and Aberdeenshire and for Perth and Kinross. But even this was easily accessible. I just had to email them, fill in a form, say what I was going to be using it for, what's the purpose, and also sort of sign off that I wasn't going to be using it for anything that I shouldn't be using it, basically. So, like I say, all easily accessible. And then also part of my remit was to provide a table of all these different data sources. So I went through and methodically sort of collected what the data type was, how I actually accessed that data. So there's records here of all the websites that I used and where it can be downloaded from, format that it could be accessed in, because that's important if you're going to be adding it to a GIS. And then also, again, really important is the licensing and the copyright. So is it okay to use this data in your own work and then to make it accessible to other people? And again, most of it came under this open government licensing for the public sector. So that was really helpful as well. So if we get down to sort of like some of the more technical aspects, once I've collated all my data, I wanted to start looking at ways of using GIS to look at the broad patterns in the prehistory archaeology within those landscapes. And I also wanted to create both 2D and 3D visualization methods that could support this. And that's just a few of the examples of the kind of data that I was collecting. So we've got the geology layer, which was accessed through the British Geological Survey, again online. The central image there is the boundary of the Cateran Ecomuseum, and that I just got from, they actually had a shapefile of the boundary that they provided me with. And then all these little kind of like red splodges and dots and points in the middle there, that actually comes from Canmore. So that's the Canmore Heritage Records. That again, you could do a search and locate the information that required, and then download it in form of a shapefile and add it to your layers. Also use the because it was QGIS, that has an innate access to layers for imagery. So this is the imagery satellite world imagery layer, and then down on the right there, that's some kind of like some of the older mapping that I was using. So I'll go through a series of slides and I'll show you some of the results that came out of these processes, and provide some examples of the 3D views in the web browsers as well later on. What was I trying to get out of this? Well, I was hoping that the results would prove the advantages of using GIS through the ability to characterize different observations in the landscape, illustrate spatial relationships, and in some cases assess how the land had changed over time. But the main point was to produce some sort of like neat interpretations of that landscape and some more focused symbology. So on the first slide of the results here, the left-hand side shows, this is just an overview map of the Cadbury Museum with its significant boundaries and locations. And again, this all compiled in QGIS with web mapping, and open source vector data. When I say vector data, I mean the boundary, the points for where the towns are, cantering trail, roads, rivers, and then that boundary up there, the Argyll National Park. It's simple to produce, but it does provide really good context. And again, along with the kind of the central map there, and that's important when you're kind of producing graphics, that the viewer has kind of like a context of where this sits within the landscape. That's also added by adding, you can add scale bars, you can add north arrows, nice simple keys that stand out, colours that stand out, and then down on the left hand side there, also addition of kind of like the copyright information as well, because that's also quite important. So that's really neat. So the right hand map is kind of like moving on a little bit further. So on that we call the prehistory archaeology that's downloaded from Canmore and from the HER records. And this gives more of a feel for distribution of the sites between sort of lowland agricultural topography in the south and the upland hills and the valleys in the north. Also, again, this would be fine. It's a little bit busy, but if you were sort of using it just as a graphic, but if this then is exported to a web map and it's zoomable, you can then actually access the attributes of each of the points for the archaeology as well from the Canmore records, and this makes it far more accessible. So in visualising landscape and prehistory archaeology, my aim was making the features and the variations in the terrain elevation appear more clearly. And each approach that I use, I think, has its strengths and weaknesses. But key, I think, to making clear data visualizations is providing formats that people are familiar with. So, you know, people know about mapping, they know that contours signify height and change in terrain. But sometimes this doesn't prove the best kind of like way of displaying combined spatial data, particularly at this scale, or indeed a suitable framework for complex relationships in spatial data. So on this slide, a common approach is to show height variation in the terrain more clearly using a hill shade, which is what we have here. And a hill shade can be applied directly from a digital elevation model, the one I was talking about earlier, which shows basically height, obviously, through hills. And you can do this quite easily in QGIS, and you can change the parameters to acquire different effects and to highlight different aspects of the topography as shown here. And this makes kind of like higher ground more prominent, delineates the valleys, provides more textured backdrop for the prehistory sites. And also sort of added a pseudo colour, so a colour ramp to emphasise that change in topography as well. And above all, it's really, I think, probably quite aesthetically pleasing. So the two-dimensional images combine mapping features, hill shade and colour to imply elevation, and also that symbology for prehistory. It's a simplistic method of presenting spatial data, but if you want to really maximise the full potential of the kind of data sets you're able to download, then you want to have a three-dimensional environment, which can kind of result in better recognition of the topography, more accurate interpretation. So the 3D of the landscape makes it sort of like the undulations and the hills and the valleys appear much clearer. So luckily, QGIS has a built-in support for visualising 3D data. Takes a little getting used to, but with the same digital elevation model as I used before, and the Esri satellite imagery web layer, I was able to create some simple fly-throughs of the museum. And this is just generated as an MP4 video that can be embedded in a website. Hopefully that's coming through clearly.
Yeah.
And the resultant 3D visualization sort of allows the viewer to move through what is actually over 1,000 square kilometers of the landscape. Provides a little bit more kind of like experiential interaction, and shows the dramatic changes from sort of like the agricultural south to across the Highland boundary fault and up through the valleys and moorlands, Strathalwell and Glen Isla, right up to kind of where the southern Grampians are. And the method itself is reasonably intuitive in QGIS, simple to apply. However, other than actually being able to kind of stop the video at certain points and view it, it's not massively interactive for the viewer. So the second approach that I use is again within QGIS, all open source, and it's via a specific plugin that's been developed by people that can code, and they just do these things. It's all completely free. Plug it in within QGIS, and you can visualize digital elevation data in 3D on a web view through a web browser, and it's built of 3D objects and landscapes. It generates an HTML file for publishing, which can be published in any web. So I've got some static views of these here, and I'll show you some actual moving versions later on. Give you an idea of some of the layers and information that can be added to provide sort of different interpretations of the landscape. Both here have the Highland boundary fault added. And the top left shows the sort of underlying geology of the Catherine Museum and how that changes north to south of the boundary. And then the bottom left shows the historical land assessment classes. The geological and landscape use differences across the boundary fault are apparent, with the upland areas in the north comprising moorland and rough grazing, the patches of woodland and forestry. And in combination with the prehistory sites, these can kind of help inform the view of the broad landscape changes. For example, the abandonment of the Bronze Age settlements and the hut circles, the associated field systems in the upland moors. The underlying geology influences the soil types and the topography, which then affects the suitability for settlement. So these show how using the relief visualization method that I showed earlier with the different lighting and the colour changes, that can kind of like help the eye of the viewer to the placement of the archaeology as well, and its relationship with elevation, provided by the colour key and dynamic lighting. So on the left hand side there you've got rock art sites, and you can, it helps to see sort of like most of those rock art sites being kind of where you've got in the valleys there the confluence of different river systems and on the sides of hills, so you start to get an idea of the pattern of distribution for these sites. And then on the right hand side you've got the hut circles, information with the crop marks, and again you can see that kind of more fertile south where you've got more agricultural land, you're going to get the crop marks, and then in the more highland areas you've got the hut circles. And it may be that there were again these settlements down in the south of the region, but because of the agricultural that were going on there, these would have been destroyed. But it helps to start sort of paint that picture of what's going on within the settlement within the past. So taking this to another level, because I had access to LiDAR, again freely available and 1 meter resolution, I was able to focus on some larger scale sites. This scene is from the confluence of the river Eric and the Isla. It's created, like I say, with a 1 meter LiDAR. Pseudo colour, so the colour ramp added to highlight the elevation. And what I think is really neat about this is that you can see the previous channels where the Eric meets the Isla, and the meanders of both, which have obviously over the centuries sort of traversed across the river plain. This may be related to remnants of the prehistory settlement on the margins on the higher ground that you can see there. So it may be that there were more prehistory sites, but where the rivers, obviously the river plains, actually destroyed this over time. And then on here again, another example. This is 3 Glen Cheat, and I don't know if you can see there on the sort of top left, you can quite clearly see the outline of the Bronze Age hut circles quite clearly, because the LiDAR is such good resolution. It really starts to highlight what's in the terrain. And this is why archaeologists use it, because you can start to spot things that you just wouldn't see with aerial photography, because it kind of strips away all the vegetation, and what you're seeing is kind of like the bare bones of the land from what would normally be hidden. So that's kind of really sort of really helps. And I think with all these things, the ability to manipulate the archaeology record features enables the extraction of these specific types related to prehistory, and this helps with comparing distribution of these features. And it relates to this example of settlements or monument type removing the sort of noise of unrelated data sort of brings out the patterns in distribution, sort of really helps. And also just making these things aesthetically pleasing is a really important consideration, particularly if you're going to engage public participation in either just viewing these things, if it's on a website, or indeed if you want people to actually start to take on board these methods themselves. Right, what I'll do is I'll shut the presentation down, and hopefully we can see some of the actual web views in action. Okay. Has the view changed for you? Can you now see?
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Yes.
So these are all in web browsers. So they've been done in QGIS, but then exported out into a web browser, which you can save onto personal desktop PC, or can actually be published onto an actual website. So simple, press the button, and you get a nice little fly through. Again, for this one, it's showing the rock art sites. You can see the rivers, but also you can see the terrain quite clearly. And the good thing about this is you can stop it anytime, and you can manipulate it, have a closer look. It's really neat. And it also gives you the information on the side as to how to actually do that as well, which can be quite useful, particularly if it's a website. So that's again overview of the Catherine Eakin Museum. I'll go to the next one. This is I was talking about using the LiDAR, and this again really neat because it shows the River Isla there and where it's gone across the sort of floodplain, and you can see the old course of where the river was, and it also shows up nicely sort of where you've got the archaeology. And again, you can stop that, manipulate it, have a closer look. We've got Cairn over here if you want to have a look down there. And you can add as many layers as you like to this. So obviously I've got some of the mapping that's showing from underneath as well. But this is going through Blackwater and Glen Shea. Again, it's nice because it really brings that, because it's kind of takes it back right to ground level. You haven't got the vegetation, you've got the colour that shows the elevation as well. It really shows you the terrain, what's happening there. You're going to show us with, and this is, I was able to get hold of some aerial imagery through the university, which is much higher resolution than the satellite. And again, it gives you a really nice kind of like, shows you with the vegetation, the kind of effects that you can get with the LiDAR. Again, really nice when you're looking at landscapes. And again, you can stop it, manipulate it, have a closer look. Also, what I was going to show you, so that was all from the Cateran Eco Museum. So obviously in conversation with Jill and what I could possibly do for kind of like, obviously because I now belong to Lawn Archaeology and History Society, what could I start to do or put together for them. So this again, this is through QGIS and exporting it to a web page and using the different layers from Canmore, open street mapping, and then the outline of the different parishes within the lawn area. And you can create quite a really sort of interactive web page. You can turn off the different layers, so I can turn off the Canmore sites. Jill was particularly interested in our chat, and so I've kind of highlighted that and downloaded the Canmore information for that. Underneath, I've got one of the 6-inch maps for Scotland, so one of the historic ones, so you get an idea of that. And beneath that, there is the Esri satellite imagery. So I turn that on again. If we zoom into these sites from Canmore, the great thing about this is if you click on that, it still has all the attribution from Canmore because it's been downloaded from there. So it will give you all the information about the ID from that site, site name, the site type. So this is a shieling hut, but it also has the link through to Canmore still built within it as well. So if I click on that, it should hopefully come up with directly through to Canmore as well, which is obviously helpful. And then finally, and this one's obviously just for Jill, I did manage to, now there's not so much LiDAR available for the lawn area, but it does skirt along the banks of the Bute, and this is just near North Connell. So this one, I was able to do a similar sort of thing, and I only did this yesterday, so this is kind of like hot off the press. So this is a little visualization for the area along Bonnell Road and around North Connell with the LiDAR data, and again showing the kind of like differences in height. And again, the little points that are on there are where the present records for archaeological heritage are. And that's it. So hopefully that's given you kind of like a taste for the kind of thing that can be done, and the kind of ideas that I have. And again, it all looks some kind of like really, really complicated, but believe me, a lot of the process are kind of repeatable, quite simple with a little bit of instruction. So, and just give it, you know, a really also immersive as well. So shall I stop sharing?
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. That is so...
This like sort of silence is kind of...
that is just so impressive.
That was all completely open source software, completely open source data. A lot of these things, a little bit of practice, people can do themselves. I mean, obviously I've got, like I said, I have got obviously my background is in this area, but if you can, following instructions, you can do these things. Right. So what my whole thing is like, why pay thousands of pounds to companies to do these things for you when you can basically sit at home and do it yourself?
Yeah. So have you written a manual?
You go to teachers.
No, because shall I tell you how a lot of this comes about? I mean, yes, I've got experience in it, but pretty much now, if you want to find out how to do something, you Google, how do I do this? And there's someone who's made a YouTube video showing you how to do it. So the things I didn't know how to do, I Googled, watched a YouTube video and taught myself how to do.
And the beauty of having this funding is that Sarah can now teach us through the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And we can all do our own.
Yeah, I've got a lot of, obviously now, because I've had to write all about this for my thesis, I can pretty much kind of like run through it all, and it's all pretty simple. It looks kind of complicated and scary, but it's really not, I think, is what I would say.
That is just amazing. And I'd love to think that we could do it for Argyll and Bute, and that's really what part of our project is going to do. And I'd like to think that we're going to do it with your help, Sarah. I think Joe's probably already got you primed, and so
it's good for me because I'm learning new things as I go along as well. So
well, regardless of whether you're going to teach us, I think I'm still going to need a manual.
I think the fun thing is we can do something for Argyll and Bute as the forum, but then as individual organizations, everybody will have their own twist on it and what they feel like they would like to get out of it. I think the adaptability and the potential for individual organizations within the forum is just
Questions. So Zoe's got a question for you, Sarah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got 2 questions actually. My first question is, when you're at the hydrographic, does that mean you're in Taunton at the moment?
I am, yeah. Well, I'm not in Taunton, I'm actually in Bridgewater down the road in my bedroom. Because again, I working from home today, but I'll be in the office tomorrow. Then mid-November I'll be back up to Argyll again until after Christmas. So it's a bit of a mix and match for me.
I was at school in Taunton at the end of my career, and we went to the hydrographic, but they were still doing it with making the charts with copper plates, which they inscribed.
Oh my goodness!
So that was a few years ago.
We've also got a very, very fancy new building now.
I think there are 2 more people on Ling who, because I'm on Ling, 2 more people on Ling who used to work there full time, but that was also some time ago, which is just interesting. But anyway, my query, my follow-up is to say that yes, we had a LiDAR done by crowdfunding about maybe 3 years ago, and so we've got a lot of information, but when we looked at the GIS, we just froze and ran away. And so at least we've got some data, so we might actually be able to use our LiDAR.
I mean, LiDAR is immensely exciting. There are so many things because it's so detailed. There's a lot you can do with it. I mean, like I say, it's kind of like changed archaeology as it stands, because a lot of the search they do is because you can strip it back to the bare ground and it shows every bump and you can see the patterns and that. I mean, it's used an awful lot, but it's also you can make really pretty things with it as well.
Well, we look forward to that, Sarah. Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? Come on, there must be some. Or are you all just completely bemused by the whole concept? Who would like to learn more?
Yeah, can I just say, can it come in here, Anne? Yeah, that was very, 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 very impressive indeed. And I certainly look forward to hearing more about how it was done. I'm reassured by hearing from our speaker that this is open source and open available data. If I just ask you to confirm that this is something that anybody can go and get. I mean,
Like I say, that part of it, that I showed you part of the table there, and I've got a table of all the different places that you can basically access all this stuff. All completely freely downloadable.
Yeah, the reason I first started thinking about this, because something that's very easy to do using the National Library's map systems is to display modern map alongside the first edition of the Ordnance Survey, and that usually gives you a really interesting comparison. But it seems to me this has taken this even further, and I think it'd be wonderful if you were able to, in fact, all these different layers, I think, are extremely valuable. and
Mhm.
extremely interesting. So I'm very, very impressed, and definitely would like to hear more about this, and particularly learn how to do it.
Well, exactly that. Yes, I mean, I met Sarah when we were doing a lawn archaeological and historical society fieldwork workshop, and we were doing the second site. Dave was doing what the desktop work was, and yeah, little voice in the back said, "Oh, if only we could do all this layering and stuff." And Sarah just turned around and said, "Well, of course you can. It's easy."
I mean, you can manipulate you, so you have it all layered up. You can put transparencies on it so that you can see, you can see it, other layers through it. You can do all sorts of things to it. It's more a kind of a matter of sometimes deciding what you want out of it and not trying to do too much, if you know what I mean. Just you don't. It depends on who your viewer is going to be and who you're doing it for, and sometimes not overcomplicating these things. How you symbolize it.
You made a very good point there about keeping it simple for exactly that reason, because you want the public to be able to see this at least, or see the results of this, and keeping it simple, I think, would be very important in that respect. So yeah, some of the stuff you showed earlier on, I'm not really aware of it, except what Canmore is and so on. But for the public, I think you would want to have something that was a bit simpler to appreciate, that was more accessible, shall we say, something they can engage with.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think one of the beauties is we can, you can create different maps for different reasons. So some of them can be very simple basics, the likes of the parishes, which is, can be, fundamental. What are the parishes, and some resources for them. I've been challenging Sarah, can we do timelines? Because those of us who do single places are really interested in the censuses and how things change through time. And she keeps saying, yes, these are possible. We've got to learn how to do it. But there would be, as you say, some of it would be the archaeology, some of it's the geology. We could actually, you would do different things, and not have it all in one place. But yes, it seems to be, and I suspect with things like this, open source, more things are becoming available. So it's one of these things that once you've learned how to, we're going to be the development will come year on year.
I mean, the other thing you got to remember about this is that it's a GIS system, so you can collect data yourself and create spatial data to add to these layers. So you can create a point or a line or a polygon, and you can add attribution to that from the data that you yourself collect, and then overlay it over what's already held. So it's, the options are pretty endless, really.
And does that work? And then that would work, I presume, at sort of town. It doesn't have to be, sort of landscape level. It would work at town level too.
It will work at any level that you want it to, because it's a GIS is for spatial data, be it kind of like your house in the back garden, or the whole country, or globally, or it depends on you work at the scale that you want to.
Right, we'll book the first lesson, I think, Sarah. First training session, and expect to see lots and lots of people there. Has anybody else got any questions? I'm still processing everything I've seen. So, it'll be interesting to go over all the notes. Are you prepared to share your PowerPoint presentation, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely do that. Yeah.
And I think you might end up being booked for a couple of more talks with different organisations. I've got one in mind. Well, I've got two in mind already. One on the Isle of Ulva that has lots and lots of interesting archaeology and social history, and another one for Mull Historical and Archaeological Society. So your diary is going to get quite filled.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about the day job, but lucky that they're quite understanding and flexible, I think.
Well, yes, all these organisations just come to the forum tutorials and events. Yeah. Yep, that's.
I mean, the interesting thing is, obviously we ourselves at the Hydrographic Office have an archive of obviously for it's all coastal and charting and information, but there is an archive centre there, and I know that various groups and individuals have used the archive at the hydro for their studies, particularly up on the islands there as well. So, and also rep data, all that kind of information. So it's kind of there are a lot of links backwards and forwards.
That's interesting.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Well, if there aren't any more questions, I think it probably just remains to say a huge thank you to Sarah for showing us what the possibilities are. And if we were in the room, we'd give you a round of applause, Sarah. So consider yourself applauded too. Thank you very much. And I think we'll look forward to seeing you.
Helen's just raised her hand.
Oh, Helen, yes, Helen. What would you like to say, Helen? You'll have to.
I was clapping.
Oh,
Big appreciation for Sarah's presentation, and also thanks to Jill, because I'm a member of the Lanarkshire Heritage Forum, but I was very interested when Jill flagged this up at a recent inter-forum meeting. I don't know if it's just worth mentioning, we've had contact from a lecturer at Stirling University who has an app which sounds not dissimilar it's a coal related project, and it's for areas of the country where there's been coal mining in the past.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and she's currently looking for funding, because apparently the downside of, I mean, I know nothing about this, but apparently the downside of having an app is it can be outdated because they can keep upgrading the system.
Yeah.
So she's now in the throes of having to almost start from scratch and get more funding. And
would be very interesting to have a contact, because the more we learn about what other people's experience has been,
I'll email you her contact details, Jill. Yeah.
Thanks.
Catherine Mills, she's called.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much, Helen. Yeah. The coal mining one would be of great interest to me, because my McGregor ancestors worked in the Argyll, south of Argyll coal mines before they moved to the northeast of England, and I've not found a huge amount of interest. There's lots and lots of information about coal mining in England and in Yorkshire and the south and the northeast particularly, but I couldn't find very much at all about the coal mining in Scotland. Although I knew it was there, I've not been able to find it. So
sorry, I put my video on, but it's not much better actually with the light in here.
Don't worry.
I mean, we get inquiries about coal mining and topography, and to be honest, we're not that well placed to respond to them, because our focus is more social history, a vast collection of interviews that were done with people and reminiscences recorded going back to the 19th century. And it's really just been quite piecemeal, anything that we happen to have gathered that is to do with the coal mining. So she's been a really good contact for us.
Right. Well, Alison's just put a message in the box there saying Campbellton Coal Company records are in the archive at Inverary. And Eleanor is saying that the coal mining there's good info in Lanarkshire. So you see, this is what's so important about organisations like ours, like the Forum. It's because we can exchange all this information that we've got that we don't know we need until somebody asks the question.
Yeah, I'd certainly be interested to hear more about Lanarkshire. We recently had an inquiry from someone at the Scottish Mining Museum at Newton Grange that was looking to have his information as robust as possible for students and so on. Now, had a student come to us at Coburn Heritage, we would probably have referred them to Newton Grange. So I'm left sort of scratching my head wondering where the best information is.
Yeah, well, if it's a coal mining museum, it would be good if they had their own archive with a copy somewhere else as well. And this is I attended one of our own courses a few years back called digital preservation, and every time questions come up like this about things needing to be renewed all the time because technology is changing, it reminds me of that course I did about digital preservation and how critically important it is. So Eleanor, you've got
There's
something
a
to
really
say.
good there's a really good Facebook page called Boswell Hoch, and it's basically Boswell Hoch is the village that's under Strathclyde Park, and there's loads of mining stuff with them. And there's a gentleman that goes to Tyree called Paul Victor, something like that. He's got loads of stuff around the Boswell area.
Wow. Well, if that can go into the message box, that would be very, very helpful. And we can pick all those links up and send them out for people, so they've got them there as and when they want to use them. So that's brilliant. You generated a lot of interest there, Sarah, so thank you for that. Yeah, and you know, George was just mentioning about the NLS maps, and I was using them to track down some more ancestors only yesterday, and they are incredibly useful. It's an absolutely superb resource, is that old maps you know, thing that the NLS have done. Yeah, brilliant. So I think if everybody's happy and nobody else has anything else that they'd like to contribute, we've got a few minutes before we need to wind up properly. So if anybody's got an update for us on what it is that they're currently doing, I mean, I don't know, George, have you got an update that you could give us?
You're mute.
You're muted, George.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I haven't really. Something I've just been doing personally, using the online ability through NRS, looking at Kirk session records. It's something that is available for a lot of places, a lot of parishes. Not all the records have been properly listed, but it is absolutely fascinating stuff. What I've been looking at are the session minutes for the parish here for Kilbrandon Parish, which covers Seal and Ling, for the 1780s, and you get a remarkable insight into local conditions. The Kirk sessions are, of course, famously concerned with antenuptial fornication, but beyond that, there's an awful lot of further information, I think, about relationships and people. And it did occur to me that it is almost perhaps enough to start thinking about whether you could reconstruct almost a database of who was there and how they all related to each other. I'm not sure that can be done, because it's probably quite a very limited data set that's actually available. It's only people who came within the purview of the Kirk session. But I would recommend to everybody to look at their local parish and then go online to NRS and look in virtual volumes. It's free to look at these and see what you can find. I think you'll unearth very, very interesting things. It makes it much easier to do it if you know the area. Frankly, if I'd been at work, 10, 15 years ago, I would have been completely unable and completely at sea knowing where all the places were. But now that I live here, it's considerably easier to find out, rather to understand the topography and understand the place names, and that really makes it a great deal richer as a thing to do. So that's me. On the ancestral tourism, that's gone really very, very quiet. Scottish Government are completely upset. Well, obviously they've got other things on their minds at the moment, and I've not really done anything on that score. I think it's still worthwhile, and I think it'd be something that might well go onto the refreshed website. I'd be happy to look at whether we could put something on there. Basic guides, I think, to people, are pointing them at where they might get further information. But I've got nothing to report, if you like, from a national or international level in respect of that, I'm afraid. But anyway, very interested indeed in this afternoon, and thoroughly enthused again about the forum. So thanks very much all.
Sorry about that, folks. I just had to go and let the dog out. I'm back now. But I could hear what you were saying, George. Interestingly, I was talking to Olive Brown, who was the session clerk for the Tobermory parish, and talking to her about getting some of the records digitized. And she says it's an enormous job, but you know, I think somebody will probably do it in the fullness of time. Yeah. I was interested to hear that they're talking about abandoning the census in future and doing a more detailed data gathering project, so that the data is more up to date rather than only a 10-year snapshot, which I think is sounds very interesting as well. And the thought of losing census for the future, I mean, I won't be here to deal with it. I'm pleased every time they release a new set of census records. But in the future, if genealogists have got a lot more access to more frequent data, then that can only be helpful. Yeah. Anybody else got a little report for us? Malcolm, you got anything? Nope.
Well, just interestingly, did anybody else get invited to take part in Doors Open Day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, right. No, I was fair enough. I just wanted to make sure the link came in on that. The little presentation I've sent round is very basic compared with what we've been saying today. But no, we're still trying to do something with the Clock Lodge. I'm working with another group who have some ideas as to sort of community enterprise that we might be able to do in the building and the surrounding land. But we shall see. It's been a long time and we keep at it.
Yeah, well done. Jane, have you got anything from Col?
Not really, but I suppose you might like to know who I am. Right, so I just joined as me because we'd not had a discussion with the group, but we started a local history society in 2019. Then we lost 2 years out of our life as we all did. So then we got going again whenever everything opened up. So maybe late 2020, I'm not sure. And we're just sort of really finding our feet at the moment. So we started, we did some oral history training and we started recording people when we can, but everybody lives very busy lives. And we had a little project with Anne Elan on Tyree. Their trustees gave us permission to copy any items they hold about Col. So I spent February and March last year doing all that. Now we've got all this stuff we need to catalogue, so that's where we're at, really. We're going to be digital. We're never going to be able, we have 170 people here and we're all running around ragged trying to support whatever groups there are, so we're probably just always going to be something digital. But
well, if there's anything that we can do in the forum, and I do hope that your local history group will join the forum, because as I said earlier, there's a lot that we can do to support you, and the more of us that there are together, then the stronger our voice is. So please just go onto our website and complete the application form, and then you can join our meetings online. You can, whatever. Anybody else got anything? Emma, have you got anything from Dunolly? Any updates for Dunolly?
I suppose main update from us is that in the new year we will be starting another lottery funded project, but this time with collections. So it's really exciting news. We have 166,000 for staffing costs and engagement activities to work over the next 3 years with the Home McDougall collection and the textile collection. So that's probably our main update. We're otherwise closed at the minute. So
yes, Alison's telling me that Jane is already an ABMHF member, so thank you for that. Sorry, I wasn't really aware of that, Jane. Anyway, thank you, Emma. I'm aware that one of my favourite embroiderers has just released another embroidery kit based on the textile collection at Dunolly. So I'm looking forward to getting that one and probably joining the class online as well to do that. So that's good. Alison, anything happening down at the archive?
Yeah, we do stuff all the time, Anne. Yeah, but it's strange.
I don't know how you managed to find time to do anything else.
But I think Eleanor had her hand up, so I think she's probably got news or something.
Right, okay, we'll move on to Eleanor then. Eleanor.
Well, I just wanted to thank Community Heritage Archive Group for the training, the oral training that was delivered across Argyll online. I think that's been very useful, and I think Jane was at that. What I wanted to highlight was there is currently an exhibition. The Oban War Memorial Group have been very busy for the last 18 months pulling together an exhibition for the commemoration year. There's a really nice exhibition being put up in Rockfield by that group. Has pulled every name of the war memorial, and has been research done on every person that's on the memorial. So it's been a lot of work, but it is a lovely exhibition that's just come together, and there is various talks over this coming weekend from some of the group. And the only other thing I think was the news at Denali, which I think is good news. And
congratulations there. Yeah.
Cultural Heritage and Arts, the Charts group, there are various projects across Argyll, but one that I think is probably relevant to this group is the Argyll collection, which has been highlighted and is now, I think, being considered as a national treasure. So there's a lot of work going on basically across every area in Argyll of where all these pictures are and how their importance to the heritage of a lot of heritage. So there's a lot, and there's been a lot happening down in Campbelltown Museum as well. So I think that's really important. And the final one is the Column Keela exhibition, which is going across Argyll. It's a joint exhibition with Ireland, and it started off in Campbelltown. It is now on Islay, and I'm not sure where its next venue will be, but it is going to tour the area. And the final part is the Oban Heritage Group are starting to look at their next exhibition, which is probably next October for the MOD, and working with Ross and Ian McQueen and various from the MOD committee just to look at what kind of exhibition we'll have. Hoping to try and do a wee bit of oral recording for that as well, just about the social side of the MOD.
Is the MOD in Oban? Is the national MOD in Oban next year?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Zoe, have you got anything from Ling?
No, I've been trying to think but we did our Google interactive map back in the summer, and that's been well received, and we used a QR code for that, and that seems to be working quite well.
Excellent.
And something else, but I can't what it is. Oh yes, Innes McQueen's been doing Gaelic place names. We've got some money from Historic Environment Scotland, and he's giving a talk on Ling later this month, and there will be a report in the future. And then I think Nature Scott is going to use some of that to make a story map, which seems to be another sort of interactive map, which I don't know anything about yet, but story map anyway. So that seems to be the future, maybe.
Can I just move to Arlene? I think you might have something to update us on, Arlene.
Say that, with for those who don't know me, I am representing Argyll and Bute Council. I haven't met you before. Thanks for inviting me to this AGM. The council is a member now. We joined at that excellent session earlier this year. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah. Just about.
I have to talk to my computer. Just to say that the department I work in does a lot of the conservation area and townscape heritage initiatives. So you may or may not have seen that Tarbert is the latest one to become a townscape heritage initiative. So we're just in the initial stages of that. And like most of these projects, it will involve traditional skills training and some heritage information gathering, if you like, and working with schools, etc. So the Rothsay Cars project and the Dunoon project are coming to an end at the moment. The Loch Gilphead one is full swing, I think, with some more training taking place there. I attended the Historic Environment Scotland Gaelic Skills Roundtable. This is the first year that Gaelic will be a pillar within the Historic Environment Scotland Skills plan that they'll be launching, I think, next February. So when you were talking about intangible culture, there was quite a lot of things named around Gaelic, and certainly things like place names, etc., were kind of put up there as kind of key points to be considered as skills gaps, particularly around interpretation and authentic storytelling around Gaelic heritage and culture. So watch the space for the Gaelic skills.
Sorry, Arlene, I was just butting in slightly there to say, does everybody know about Alistair White from Mull, who is a place names expert, and he's already released and published, I think he's on his 3rd publication now, the Gaelic Place Names project. Have you come across Alistair White? He's a research fellow at Edinburgh, but he's a Mull lad. Yeah. Okay.
And I suppose finally, just to say that the council will be consulting on its economic strategy, and I'm aware that I was sent a wonderful kind of partnership document that in the Western Isles that they're working together on heritage, and you know, it did look great. The council doesn't have the resources to fund something like that, but we're always open to working in partnership. So like I say, the economic strategy should be out for consultation November already. I was going to say towards the end of this year, so I don't know if I'll make it the end of this year, but certainly in progress. And I have put yourselves forward as one of the agencies to consult with, so hopefully you'll be able to input into that. So that's everything from me. Thank you
very much, Arlene. Jill, would you like to give us an update on what's happening at Ardhatton and possibly LAHS?
Well, yes, not so much Ardhatton, but that just stays online with various people coming to say, and the Facebook and things like that. Lawn Archaeological is now much more secure and stable, which is lovely, having been teetering at the end of last year. And we've got a fabulous set of talks coming up through the winter. So we have normally have one a month, but now we have one a month plus an extra 3 events, including one online about how to get more out of Canmore, or more importantly, how to get more into Canmore in January, which will be open to more to other people as well. I think most of us who've met Canmore and tried to find out what's in there realize just how shady some of the information is, and how the references can look like they're modern, and you find that they're actually in 1880s and things like that. So it will be really interesting. There is a capacity to add information into Canmore, but the portal and the way to do it seems to be a bit clunky. So it would be really good to learn from the people who do it exactly how it works, and how we can the massive resources we have in the local area of local historians who get out and about and see things and do things and research, can make that whole resource much more powerful, which then feeds into all the things we're going to be doing with the map.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
But yes, there's all sorts of, so yeah, look on the Lawn Archaeological website for details of the talks and things, and then see what we come up with the next summer.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you very much. And last but not least, I don't know whether Kirsten's got anything to tell us from charts. Kirsten, have you got anything?
Hi, I think Eleanor covered it quite well earlier on, just about the upcoming exhibitions and kind of work, and just if there's anything that we can do to support each other in future working, just continue to do that. Just let me know. I'm happy to.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. Well, I don't think I've got very much to say. We keep having regular meetings of Mole Historical and Archaeological Society, and we had our annual joint meeting with the Friends of Mole Museum last Friday night, when we had Jenny Robertson, who was the speaker, and she used to be an historic Scotland monuments officer, and she's based on Ardnamurchan, and she came to talk about land use now on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. Now, it did sound as though the title did sound a bit dry, but I tell you, the talk was far from dry. So if anybody's looking for a speaker, Jenny Robertson is superb. So we had a lovely evening, and we've got a meeting coming up next week to discuss our programme for next year. So, you know, we just keep listening and picking up useful information all the way around. And the Isle of Ulva, we've got a board meeting tonight, which I have just about finished preparing for, but I've got a bit more to do tonight before the meeting. Lots of things happening over in Ulva, so I might be able to update you more on that on another occasion. And I think that might be everybody. Oban Times Argyllshire Advertiser is now online, British newspapers online. Great what you can find, as I found with our Shinty research. Thanks very much for that, Eleanor. Yeah, I mean, some of the data sets that are being uploaded on some of the genealogy websites they're just reeling in. You know, it's just coming in big droves. I don't know, you know, it's amazing what all the volunteers transcribers can do, even though sometimes they get things a little bit wrong. But yeah, it's very good. So I'll say thank you to Sarah for giving us a super talk and inspiring us to go on with digital mapping. And thank you to everybody for joining us. And we'll let you know the date of next year's meeting, and any other events that are coming up, we'll circulate. So thank you again, everybody, and have a good week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.